Welcome, Andrew, to Targeted Website Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about the band and the new album Flyball Princess, where the band continue with the sound achieved over the years, mixing progressive music, rock, extreme metal, and other styles into there. So, for that reason, how are you describe the music from Code, and why the band continue experimenting with these new environments in each album?
I think we sort of change over time, I think, but the essence has always been the same, where we want to create music which essentially we want to listen to, and something which perhaps has a bit more of a an alternative feel to it, perhaps. And I think definitely on the new album, this is probably the most metal album we've done in quite a long time. Probably maybe the most metal one we've done so far, actually. It just felt like the right time for that kind of music to come out, essentially. So yeah, we always just start from the very bare basics, see the first riffs of an album, see how it comes out, and then over time it develops, and it is what it is. So there's no master plan. This is what comes out of us.
Mm. So I've been hearing all discography to do this interview because as I told you, I really like all the albums from the band, and
Mm.
when I listen a lot of things the first album to this new one, I felt that Flyborn Princess returns to the old school sound if we compare with the previous one, Mod. When you composing a new album, do you choose the path or is something more instinctive?
I think it's probably more instinctive. So for the previous album, it all started from just in essence that came from a guitar sound. I was playing around with a different guitar sound and experimented a bit, and a couple of riffs came out which were interesting, a bit different to what we'd done before. And I thought maybe we could see how this goes for a whole album. Kept on writing in that broad way, a lot more improvisational approach that album was, I think, and that's how that album came out. Whereas this one, the new one, I just felt the need to get back to kind of like the old sounds that we had in terms of, just pure production value, start writing in that style, and that's just what happened to come out of that particular moment in time. So yeah, no master plan at all. Once we got one song written, then it's a case of, okay, does this feel like the right way to take the rest of the album? And in this case, it did again. So that's how it develops. And once I've written 3 or 4 songs, then it's time to start thinking about how an album will be put together and what it needs. So, for example, it would be quite a boring album just to have 8 songs of the same 4-minute long, quite snappy metal songs. I felt like I needed quite a long atmospheric ending to the song, ending to the album. Sorry, the beginning of the album needs something really, really snappy and sharp with an intro, and then something in the middle to break it up. So once you got the first few songs, working out what is missing from an album context, and then trying to create that while maintaining the flow with the rest of the songs. So that's how that comes about.
And what do you think about of getting out of the sound achieved with code? Perhaps sometime because as I told you, in mod you have a different sound from compared with the other albums because you have you didn't the guttural parts, just lyric voices. So what do you think is to getting out of this sound achieved and go by yourself into a new album, new sound, newer? Does the sound of the band allow it?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I think each album had its own feel, and I think Mutt, the previous album, was the one where we probably pushed that to its limits. I think, and it was broadly accepted. So by doing that, then that opens up a lot of doors to what we can do in the future. But and this might seem like a bit of a retrograde step to go back to something a lot more metal based, but that just is what we felt like was the right thing to do at this moment in time. So what the next album will sound like, no idea. But as long as it has that essence of what I personally feel makes a Code album, then the style or medium doesn't matter so much, as long as it creates that certain spark that I'm looking for, which centers it on what I think code is, then the style doesn't matter too much. So this is what we did this time. I don't know what we'll do next time. No idea.
Okay, okay. As I told you in the previous question, I heard a lot of albums from Code, and especially the first two, Novoa Gloaming and Resplendent Grotesque. Both are my favorites, cause you mix string music with the progressive elements, and then the listeners hears a band with a personal touch, different to compare with other bands. It's very difficult. So, what are your memories from these two albums?
Um, yeah, well, the first one was I think what we wanted to do with the first one was create music that we wanted to hear that we hadn't heard in quite a while. So I think the band members, especially myself and Matt, were very much fans of a certain kind of music in that period of time, and we didn't feel like um, that kind of slightly left field black metal had been done in quite some time, and we felt there's more to be done with it. So that was kind of our goal, to create the kind of music we liked listening to back in the early 90s, but with our own touch on it. And so it was kind of like almost like a homage or almost to what we really appreciated at that moment and in those early days. And that's kind of what the title reflects as well, something like a new take on an old darkness type thing. That was kind of what we wanted to do with that. And yeah, and so that was kind of like an obscure type feeling album. And I think I remember for the second one, Resplendent Grotesque, we wanted something which was a lot sharper with higher production values. And almost weirdly, because the first album was they were quite long songs, quite meandering songs, whereas for the second album, I didn't want there to be a single wasted 30 seconds or 10 seconds or anything. Everything needed to be really purposeful, no waste or anything. So that's why it ended up being that album was quite sharp and direct and in and out in, I don't know, what was it, 36, 37 minutes or whatever it was.
Mm,
And so it had a very different feel to it. It was much more focused on purpose and no fat and getting to the
okay.
point.
Okay, okay. As I told you, the this new one, Flyable Flower Price, returned with the old sound, with this vibe, because I like the first two albums, and I when I hear this one, really like it because I hear the first code wave. So because I think why do you decide to return to the roots?
There wasn't a conscious decision for it. Like I said, I
Yeah.
started writing. I just picked up my guitar. I recently got a guitar sound which was really similar to Resplendent Grotesque without having to turn my amps on and all that sort of thing. So that kind of made me play in that similar way to the way that first album was written. So once that basic construct was in place where the tones were kind of similar and it makes you want to play in that certain way, that sort of made me continue in that direction. So if I'm being honest, I think it was probably just starting to play in the guitar sound, which was really similar to Resplendent Grotesque, and that made me play in a certain way. And once I'd written the song, um, I realized I enjoyed going back to playing in that kind of similar way and wanted to continue that. And that's why, yeah, I agree. I think it sounds closer to Resplendent Grotesque than anything else we've done, that's for sure. Um, and in a similar way for this one, like with Resplendent Grotesque, there was a lot of improvisation and a lot of looseness, whereas this, every single guitar layer and note was labored over. So if it wasn't quite right, I changed it. And there's lots of guitar layers, lots of details, and really spent a lot of time making sure every single element was as perfect as it could be. And that's kind of like an attention to detail I haven't used as much since Resplendent Grotesque. That's probably why it feels similar to that too.
Other detail of your discography is from first album, the band has a status producing albums with 2 and 4 years. But with this new one, you take 6 years. So what are you delayed more than usual in this Flybound Prince? Princes.
Yeah, Prince. Yeah. Well, there was a lot of personal stuff going on for various members of the band. So there was a couple of years where we just weren't able to make music because what was going on in our own lives essentially. But once we did start writing and recording, the actual process took a huge amount of time. So I think the first riffs I wrote were probably written 3.5 years ago, and it took probably a year to write it, and then another 6-8 months to record all the various bits of it, and then the mixing took a huge amount of time, and then of course once you hand in an album, then there's another 5 months before the physical product can be pressed, due to how long it takes to get albums out or in general. So add those things together and it's 6 years. So if we didn't have the personal upheavals that were going on in the first 2 years, it would have been another 4 years, and here we are, because that's how long it takes to create one of our albums essentially. So it's only the 2 year difference, I would say. Otherwise it's always going to be 4 years for us.
Well, since the beginning, I saw that Code has your first label was Spike Farm Records, then was Taboo Recordings, and for the next two was Agonia Records, and now this is Dark Essence Records. So how was the experience with the previous labels? Do you have any trouble? And especially with Agonia, you have to perhaps. I think I was thinking that the next album, Disney one, will release it by Agonia, but you changed with the Dark Essence Records. What happened to change from Agonia to Dark Essence Records?
Yeah, it's always each label change has been for a specific reason, and it's probably best not to air too much of that in public, just because it's, just to professionally keep those things internally makes a bit more sense. But I would say Agonia is a label with a large number of releases, large number of bands, and they do a good job at keeping those releases coming out. But I think after 2 albums, we wanted to go to a label which was smaller and had a more personal touch, and would treat an individual album a lot with a lot more direct attention. And so that's why Dark Essence was a great choice for us, because they are they're a pretty small label, but they've got good distribution and a lot of good respect. And plus, we've known various members of the label for a long time. So I think we actually played on a Dark Essence festival back in 2010 or 2009 or something like that. So we've known them for a long time, and even now when we're just about to release our albums, the amount of attention we're getting from them, and attention to detail and communications, are great. So I think it's that personal touch we were after, and we're definitely getting that. So that's the primary reason.
Okay, okay. Now we focus a little with the UK scene, especially from the black metal scene, because Gold start with a lot of touch with black metal style from Norway, from Sweden, this kind of stuff. So musically, Gold is something different than the usual bands from UK, because I heard Axratra, Fane, Northrend, Oak, Saur, and many more bands. But the one thing is about this band is that all bands is made by one person. All person did the drums, the guitar, the bass, the vocals, and I think the producing too. And as I saw into the members of the band, when the band called Celestial, I don't remember the name I now. When the band called Seasonal Code, you did all the instruments too. So why this is continue to see in each decade, in each year with UK? Why the UK black metal bands has one band, has one member?
Yeah, I don't know why that's specific to the UK. I think when I think back to Seasonal Code, when I first started that the reason why that was a one man band thing essentially was because of lacking other people to play music with. There was no other reason. It wasn't because I deliberately wanted to isolate myself from anyone and create this thing on my own. It's just that where I lived, it was I wasn't living in a big city, and people around there, I didn't know anyone who liked the same kind of music, and so I wanted to create my own thing. So that's what I did. And also, I think when I started that was just at the beginning of when you could create music via PC and digital way of doing things rather than the old 4 track and all that sort of thing. So was starting to become easier, and I think now that everyone's got a computer, it's really easy to create music on your own, and yeah, those barriers are gone. So that's why I think there's probably a proliferation of that. Um, once I started getting in contact with more people locally who wanted to play this sort of music, that's when this turned into a band, and it's stayed that way since. Of course, our early lineups were people from various different countries, which was great, but also a challenge. But in terms of why that's happening now, I think I can't speak for other bands, but I think that's because it's easier. Easier. You can program a
Yeah.
drum beat. You can record your guitars over it. You can do your vocals, and all from the comfort of your own bedroom. And there you are. You have a release. And yeah, yeah, that's probably why. I don't want to speak for people, but I haven't really thought whether it's a English specific thing. I'm a bit out of touch, I would say, so I'm not too sure.
Okay, okay. Speaking of the band lineup from the beginning, it looks like you are the last member from the early days of Code. So
Hmm.
with more than 20 years, as I told you, since the band called Seasonal Code. So how does it feel to have lived so long with Code to this day? And perhaps do you have communication with the first lineup of the band?
Yeah, I mean, I it's probably unhealthy how much energy I've poured into this over the last 20 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm writing music and working on it, it's living in my head the whole time. I'm constantly thinking of how a song structure works, whether things need to change or so. Yeah, I'd say the last 20 years, it's been rewarding because the original goal was to purely to get the first album out. Everything after that was a bonus. And yeah, it's been. I look back at it as a rewarding time, but like I say, I could probably do with dealing with this in a bit more of a healthy mental way because I obsess over things, and 20 years of obsessing over music like this is perhaps not the best, but there you are. But in terms of old members, yeah, the majority of the people we're still keeping contact with. So Matt, the original vocalist, still very good friends, and we do work together still. I lend some of my guitaring to Hex Festival and that sort of thing. Still in contact with Yusuf as well. We're very good friends. There's a couple of people who are sort of who are very insular at the time as well. So our first drummer, Eric Lancelot, was a lovely, great guy, but extremely unique person, and kept in touch for a while. But it's very hard to keep in touch with him because he's so elusive, and I haven't spoken to him in probably 12 years or something like that. So it's a shame. I missed the guy. He was a good guy, and I don't know what he's doing. I wish him all the best. But if someone is a very unique spirit like that, it's hard to keep touch with them.
So, returning to the UK bands, I saw during the time because I'm 42 years old, and I see the extreme movements from UK that the grindcore and death metal and doom metal was more harder, more or was the big styles into the UK, but the black metal style is I I don't see more bands from Cold, Aker Cork. That's one band's mixed extreme black metal, another kind of style. So why UK doesn't has like inclination to the black metal? Because I spoke with other bands, I spoke with bands in Germany, in Norway, and they told me that the Norwegian sound, the Swedish sound, has to be more cold, more darkness into their hearts to produce black metal. So these things maybe is counterproductive because is England has more happy hearts, perhaps.
As an English person, I can't believe that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, when I look back, I'm a similar to age to you, so I'm 44, and when I was growing up with extreme metal at that time, it was the death metal bands from England were amazing. So Carcass and Cancer and all those sort of bands,
Yeah.
and then the death doom side of things, you had Anathema, My Dying Bride, and Paradise Lost, and it doesn't get much better than that. Those early albums, and they're really, really strong. And I think why black metal never really took off in quite the same way, or the English black metal hasn't had quite such a far-reaching effect. I don't know. I think maybe because the Norwegian, the Swedish, the Finnish, the Greek black metal, they all had really, really distinct characters to them. So the Norwegian stuff was really cold and icy. The Swedish stuff had that kind of a bit more of a melodic sort of sensibility sometimes, and then the Finnish stuff was always just dark and weird. And then the Greek had this kind of like sort of warm, mystical type feeling to it as well. And I don't think there was anything so obvious in the black metal that England was creating at that time. And I don't think it's because the English people are happier. I definitely don't think it's that, because the English people are generally very miserable people, I would say. But I don't think there was ever a unifying sound which you could say was distinctly English. So you had Cradle of Filth doing their early stuff, which was kind of
Yeah.
death metal, and then started to be more black metal, and then it started to become quite polished. And then because it was so idiosyncratic and defined in its own way, it was really hard for bands to copy that and not say, oh, okay, you just sound like Cradle of Filth, rather than you sound like an English black metal band. And yeah, and I wonder if it may be just that there isn't that unifying sound where you can say that's English. I don't know if that's changed recently or not. Um, like I say, I'm a little bit out of the loop with new black metal bands in general, but it could be that. I'm just guessing, but I do agree there isn't an English sound you can point to and say, yes, this is the big impact that English black metal has had on the world, because it's kind of indistinct.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll return about the members, but now one thing is that you live now in New Zealand nowadays. So, but I think all members from Cult live in UK. So, how is the band going to be for the future presentations of or tours? Will tour with official members, or perhaps will you have support musicians? Meanwhile, you stayed in New Zealand.
Definitely wouldn't be support musicians in New Zealand. So the group we have is Code, essentially. So myself and the four guys in England. And part of the reason why there was a gap after Merckx was because we didn't know whether it'd be possible to carry on after I moved. But what I have been doing since, COVID aside, of course, but every year going back to England and doing something, whether that is playing some shows. We did a couple of small little tours when I've been back, or doing some recordings. So one time we were back, that's when we did our Lost Signal EP. We got together in a studio and just recorded those songs, put it together, and that was that. So I come back regularly is the short answer to that. And each time I do come back, we make sure we do something which is furthering what the band is doing, and I can get time off work to do those sort of things too. So although we're not going to be able to be as responsive as, we'll get a shout for a gig and can you do this in 2 weeks' time, those days are kind of gone. But if they're booked in advance and it makes sense, then yeah, we're going to keep on doing that. So I don't think it'll make a massive difference, because we weren't a particularly prolific live band anyway. But yeah, we're going to keep doing whatever we need to do. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, now, until here we speak about the band, about the past, about the albums, about this new album, the return to the roots within this new album, and let's speak a little of the UK scene into the black metal and other styles. So now we will speak about other matters into the metal scene, as because this world has a lot of things like new forms of hero music, the collections, the vinyls, the underground movement, the mainstream movement, these kind of things that's relating a lot with the heavy metal status around the world. So as a far and underground band and a conventional or mainstream band, what should be considered, there are patterns according to the fans that more vinyl and cassette productions stick to this underground metal concept, and this in these fans thinks the CD just is the part of the collection, not the real physical format for the underground, like they say. So what do you think are the factors for the fans to stick to this underground metal concept, and where does Code belong? Is a mainstream band, is an underground band, or perhaps it's none?
I think Code's probably. I mean, in terms of popularity, definitely underground. We're not a big band by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we do try to pride ourselves on having um, um, production values which are, more mainstream level,
Okay.
perhaps within our means, of course. So we haven't been going for a deliberately um, underground type sound. So I think that's potentially the one differentiation I would say. But I've got no illusions. We're definitely an underground band due to our size. And in terms of collecting, I think even since, well, I can only speak from my own experience. So from when I've been involved in music, so I started tape trading in sort of like 1990 or something like that, and it was always it seems to be that quite a big thing in the metal world is collecting and accumulating collections. So it's and that seems to be very much a part of what underground metal was about. I mean, there are people who just do the electronic side of things and just have the MP3s, and that's all fine too. But there seems to be a high proportion of people who really value the
Yeah.
physical product and collecting and having different versions and all that. Essentially, nerd culture about metal in the most positive way, because I am one myself. I've got a huge collection of records and CDs and tapes, and it's got, I just end up taking all this stuff around with me, but I can't part with it because I'm so obsessed with all this music and all the different
Yeah.
versions, the artwork and everything. So, and I'm definitely not alone, so and in terms of what format, I think back when I was first into this sort of thing, the CDs were really expensive compared to the album. So I've got this flyer collection over there, and there's a Marduk Dark Endless flyer for No Fashion Records, and the LP is $15, and the CD is $18. And if you were to show that now, it's sort of like, it's crazy to think that the LP was less valuable of a commodity than the CD was. The CD was, oh, this is the new technology. Should cost a lot of money, and now for a long time, over the last 10 years especially, the vinyl craze has been going quite insane, really. All the different colors that you can get and all that kind of thing, which is good for some people. But I think in terms of collectability, CDs are coming back now. So some of the CDs from the first pressings of those albums from the 90s, if you look them up now, they're worth nearly as much, sometimes more, than the record was. So they're having their own kind of resurgence as well. I think the tape resurgence has been happening in the last 5 years or so, and people are starting to be a bit more nostalgic about that, myself included. Yeah, I still love tapes, even though they're ridiculously
Yeah.
unpractical and they age terribly. But they're you love the charm of tapes. And I think CDs, although they're kind of like the sort of the format which people are least protective over. I don't think it'll be long before people start realizing all those CDs they've got, actually some of them are really cool. It's nice to have the original ones you had, and their value will start going up, and then because the value will go up, that's when all of a sudden there'll be commodity again. So I think it's sort of like a ever up and down flow, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So other details about this. This is new. This, as you said, the MP3 is now the way that the many people hear music, because MP3 like Spotify, Tidal, this kind of digital platforms has a lot of bands in for one click. So into this method is the new generation prefers to hear into these platforms one, two, three, or maximum four songs in from an album, and they love to do their playlist, just put one, two, three, four songs. I speaking about the 15 or 20 years old person now. So what are you think about the albums doesn't have the same impact compared to the 80s and 90s, and what are your solutions? No, some much better. So what does band need to do to improve the listen of all songs in an album?
That's a really tough one, because I don't know the answer to that, because
Yeah.
if I am only interested in albums. So EPs and 7 inches, I kind of like them, but if I was going to have the choice, I'm always going to go for the album. And an album is what makes sense in terms of 40 minutes thereabouts is a nice good length of time to get into something and really experience it. And there's a flow of the different songs, um, and so I have a hard time getting into the mindset of being happy just listening to one or two songs from an album and thinking, yeah, that's fine. I've experienced that. That's enough. And people do that. That's good. But I honestly don't know, and I don't think I could ever write for that purpose. What I will say is how my listening tastes have changed recently, in the last 10-15 years or whatever. Is I'll go on the internet, and if there's an album coming out, I'll try two or three songs, and if I like it, then I'm going to buy the album and then not listen to it again, and then wait for the album to come and then listen to it. And that's kind of like, so that's my like dipping my toe into how people listen to music now, almost. There's gone are the days when you see a flyer and you think, okay, that looks good, it might be good. I'm going to send $15 out in the post, and hopefully in a month's time I might get something back. Now you can listen to two or three songs. That's good. I'm going to buy that, and then you're done. So a roundabout way of answering, I don't really know. I don't know how people write to that new way of being. It's always albums for me.
Okay, okay, okay. So many times when I did interviews, most of the musicians, the bands interview with, doesn't hear what is currently happening into the heavy metal nowadays, and that's why artistic monuments from these new years are lost in time for these common thoughts. What do you think? What do you think of the idea of being an extreme metal, progressive metal, or a nivel and extreme metal music, and not listen the current music?
Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I guess that the purist might say that means that you're completely in your own world when you're creating music, and so you haven't got any modern influences, and that way you might be able to create something which is more traditional, perhaps. But then at the same time, um, your contact points are only what you listen to when you're younger, and I can understand that, because that's the stuff I get really excited about as well, is the music I listened to when you were growing up. I think it's the same for everyone. Yeah, whether you grew up in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, whatever. When you're what sort of 14 to 18, that's the time when you're the most excited about music and taking it in, and this is what it is. And so yeah, maybe you do want to keep hold of that. And for me, I'm always looking for new music to listen to, and that doesn't necessarily just mean new music that's coming out now, but music I've not heard of before anyway, which may have come out in the 60s, 70s, all the way through to now. So just because you're not keeping up with the current music doesn't mean you're not finding out a huge amount of stuff too. But I do listen to a lot of new music as well, and I'm always buying new albums, and there's still bands which I follow and buy their stuff. So yeah, I'm not part of that group, I would say, which is really wedded to my little timeline of this is the music I like and I won't listen to anything else. I'm always trying to find new things to listen to, and whether that affects the music I make in a positive or negative way, I don't know. I guess that's for other people to say whether it's got better or worse, but that's what it is for me.
And if we're relating this last question, do you have a top five of albums for 2020?
Um, I don't know if they're falling in 2020 or not, but I really enjoyed the last Necros Christos album. Well, that
Okay.
was incredible, absolutely incredible way to finish a career. That was. Um, I'm just trying to look over there to see what I got recently. The Sweven, the Eternal Resonance album, that really took me as well. That was a really good one. I don't know if it was 2020 or not. It might have been the year before. I'm not sure, but oh, it's difficult to think. Really difficult to think. I get so I probably buy too much music and I forget which is old and which is not, and all
Yeah,
those
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
those two are jumping out at me. I really enjoyed those two. In the metal world, of course, there's other things as well, but yeah, I think those two will do me. Yeah.
So, as you said, one thing, there's many bands around the world doing the stuff like they like to do. So, because now this, if we speaking around the string metal worldwide, it is denoted that this style is one that continues to grow up with more and more expressions that not having to do with the 80s and 90s. As you can see, Code has elements from some parts of the 90s and a little 70s because the progressive music into there. But if we related all this kind of influence, the sound of Code is very new from these years. It's very different from Morbid Angel, from Emperor, from this kind of stuff. And if we can hear other bands like Imperial Triumphant, like Cattle Decapitation, these new bands, is they have a personal sound that not happen to do with the 80s and 90s. So why the extreme metal keeps continues grow up with more creativity than old styles? Because I mean the old styles is thrash metal, speed metal, power metal. This kind of stuff is stagnated with ancient rhymes. Because if you hear a 2021 band release a new album, you hear a heavy metal, you hear like Iron Maiden, like Angel Witch, like Diamond Head, this kind of stuff. So why the extreme metals continue to grow up?
That's a difficult one. I guess maybe it's because there's a constant stream of people who are getting into it, and at different ages, and as if a person is getting into it and they're younger, bringing in their I guess their points of reference are maybe a bit later than those 80s and 90s, then is going to make someone play in a different way too. Although you're always going to get to know the old bands because that's where things came from. So I guess that's maybe just because people are there's a continual interest in this kind of music, which is incredible to think. But in terms of like the classic sort of 80s Iron Maiden type thing, there's only they're the best bands in the world basically, so you can't change that, and no one's going to know. They are what they are, and they've kind of stayed the same in their own way, almost. So I honestly don't know the answer to that, but um I would just as happily listen to something from the 80s as these days, to be in anyway, really. So I honestly don't know what the answer to that is.
Okay, okay. Well, we are close to end this interview, Andrew. And today, how do you see the situation of the bands in the face of this new pandemic? How this is pandemic affecting to the musician bands and the crew behind the curtain? Because they will do the possible to the concerts, tours, everything into the festival. So, and what do you think about this matter?
It's quite a weird, strange one actually, because um, we were never a band which played that much, because we've all got day jobs and all that kind of stuff. So our ability to go out there and play all the time has never been there. So the pandemic thing is kind of played into the way that we are anyway, because we never do much, and now all loads of other bands are in the same situation, and so we're kind of now kind of a bit more on a par almost in a weird way. So I think it's been trying to get a bit more creative with content and connection with people who are interested in the music. So I know personally over the last year or so I've been looking into various old recordings and demos and all that sort of thing, and thinking what I might be able to do with those, and would people be interested in listening to them, and gradually putting some of those up on the internet for people to listen to, and that sort of thing. So something a bit more bit more proactive with the whole electronic, social media side of things, which I've never been that comfortable with. But if I can look round to things which I think people might be interested in, guitar playthroughs and that sort of thing, done a couple of those, and not something I would usually consider doing, but in terms of keeping people interested and giving people things to listen to that they might like, then that sort of thing is always good. And maybe it'll make myself think about that more in future, and not be quite so just distant from the whole social media thing, and sticking to the old ways of, or whatever what was in the past, and being a bit more positive about it. So maybe that's how it will change things. Of course, live gigs, nothing's happening there at all, and I can't wait for that to start again and get the opportunity to play somewhere, and just the opportunity to go back home and do some more things back home as well. So I'm itching for it to be in our rearview mirror, definitely.
So, and what is your opinion about the streaming concerts?
I think it's a necessary evil, really. I mean, it's not the same, obviously, as being in an actual gig, but it's a great way of actually connecting with people, and giving people entertainment when so many people are stuck at home doing nothing and desperately searching for something to do, and missing all those the usual things they used to do, going to concerts and everything. And I think it's a great thing to do. I'm not quite sure how financially viable it is, but I think it's wonderful that bands are doing that, and really support them for doing that. I think it's a great idea. And plus once you've done, you can put them on the internet and they're there for other people to watch as well. So I think it's great.
Well, Andrew, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one as I did, and thank you very much for your time. And really, really congratulations for the new album. For me, will be in my top 20 for the web. I'm the main editor in Dargetic, so this will be in the end of the year will be for my top 10, for my top 20. So take care, and their best wishes from this part of the world. Any last words from your fans in Latin America and Dargetic readers?
Just thank you for taking the time to check us out, and really appreciate your time, Javier, for speaking to us. It's been a really good interview, actually. Lots of interesting questions, and I can always talk about old days all the time because I'm an old bastard. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time and taking the time to listen to our music. I know there's a lot of music out there, so when someone actually takes the time to listen to it, it's always very special. So thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it.